Hi, friends. I just wanted to give you a little heads up that this episode does have a trigger warning for spiritual trauma and suicidal ideation. So if this episode is not for you, just go ahead and skip it, and we'll see you next week. There was always this constant pressure. I was known as like the super Christian.
Like, it's a very brave thing to do.
While everybody was crushing on these stupid boys, I was crushing on my friends.
SOS! Oh my God.
Send an SOS! Welcome back to another episode of At Our Place with Megan and Sherell. I'm Sherell.
And I'm Megan. This is our 5th podcast.
That's a big deal. How do you feel about that?
That's crazy. Okay, well, I forgot that I wanted to say every episode we've been getting slightly more professional.
Slightly. Not all crazy, guys. We learned a thing or two. A couple tricks along the way.
Yeah, audio engineer. And now I can call myself an engineer, right?
I don't think so. I think your engineer friends might have something to say about that.
Well, you guys, I'm on your level. So there we go. You
didn't even have to do 4 years of university for that.
Nope. It's just YouTube. And now we have like cool little mic stands, so we're not flopping around with our microphones.
Yes, we took some of your feedback and we said, that's it. We have to level up.
Yeah.
So we did it.
Yeah. Literally any feedback you guys have, we are open to it. We want to sound good. Like,
we want to sound excellent.
Yeah. Not that we already don't.
I'm going to give you guys some of that ASMR stuff you love so much.
No, I don't like that stuff.
I literally do want to pour my tea, though. That's what I said.
Well, I want to pour my coffee, too. So I'm going to take a second.
Tea versus coffee.
I'm going to do it really fast.
Guess which one of us grew up in the Bay and which one of us grew up overseas?
Probably sounds like we're peeing or something.
You, babe.
We both did it at the same time. How are we doing? Sherell made me really great... What are they called?
Tostadas. I made you huevos rancheros.
For my Saturday breakfast. They were so... heavenly. What was on there? What are the ingredients
on the tostada?
Mm-hmm.
You start with the tostada, then
it's like the flat crunchy.
Well, we're vegetarian, so there was no meat on it, but we did like beans, sauteed onion and mushrooms, some lettuce, some cheese.
And then I made an over easy egg to put on top of it.
Yep. And then you let it all go together.
Gosh. Also put seasoning, because I don't do seasoning. Like, I can't
give away my secrets.
No, please do.
Plus, honestly, I don't remember. I literally just throw some stuff on there and then I'm like, that looks good. And then I taste it and I'm like,
Sherell is seriously like a chef. Like, she just like will throw little spices in there and taste it with a little spoon, and like she doesn't even remember what she puts in there, but it's so delicious and I get to reap the benefits of that. So
well, I appreciate you saying that, but I get a little frustrated about that for myself, because if I really enjoy something, I don't really remember what I did last time. I really need to take notes.
Yeah, like take a little video of yourself maybe, or like I'll just jot down notes and be like, oh yes, I added paprika this time. You should make a cookbook. People would like it. Hey, you guys.
As soon as you turn it into work, I just don't feel like doing it.
Well, maybe like little videos of you cooking. It'll be like, what's Sherell doing in the kitchen today?
That's a funny YouTube channel. We should make that.
Oh, like a whole separate thing. Like,
what's Sherell doing in the kitchen today?
You know what? That's going to be the one thing out of all the things we're doing. Music, podcasting. That's going to
be the one thing that takes off. The thing that we're the least serious about.
Yeah, like nice. Sherell making, what are they called again? Tortas?
No, tortilla. Well, tostadas.
Tostadas. Yeah. It'll be you making your famous tostadas.
My famous.
And veggie burgers. And what else do we make?
All things vegetarian. That's how I wooed you.
My morning...
You're welcome.
My morning has been quite pleasant. I took the food and some coffee and sat outside and rested for a bit, which is new for me, but I needed it.
Good for you.
Oh, I know.
How was your week, babe?
It was good. Well, I feel like we should preface this episode because I feel like it's a very special one.
Oh.
and people need to know what we're going to talk about.
The people need to know.
Yeah, and you're going to need enough time for this episode, so I just kind of want to like jump in.
Oh, okay. So your week was fine. My week was all right. We did have a gig last night. That was really fun.
Yes, my parents came and our friends came, and it was really sweet. And our sound guy is the best.
Yeah.
And
shout out to Phil. We love you.
Yeah, it makes a world of a difference, especially when people are just kind-hearted and you work with them and they come see you play music, and it was just all overall.
It was all over, y'all.
Overalls. Yeah, it was 5 out of 5 star experience for me. And now I'm really exhausted. So
she got overhauled.
No. No. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So Sherell said a great idea that we should have 2 different episodes highlighting each other's coming out experiences and stories.
Because if you don't know, we are 2 queer women.
We make love with each other. Oh, we forgot to do our like intro. We're wives and we play music together, and that's us. Anyway,
that was our intro.
Yeah,
I feel like we should write a jingle. We're songwriters. We should.
I thought about that. Like, instead of our like little like groovy music that we have before our episodes, we should do like at our place or something.
We'll take submissions, okay? We'll take some ideas from the audience.
This is us at our place. Come take a seat down.
Oh my
drink a little coffee, drink a little tea. Have some fun time with you and me.
I feel like that was more than a jingle. That was like an entire pop song right there.
If you haven't heard any of my music or our music, please don't think I'm bad. I do this thing where I like to sing in a funny way that makes me laugh, and it's not my professional voice, nor will it ever be.
That's it, folks.
Yeah.
This is what she went to school for.
I didn't go to what?
That's all she wrote.
I didn't go to school for.
Didn't you minor in music?
Well, yes, I did.
Well, then.
But that's not where
I paid for that. To minor in music.
I didn't.
So you did go to school for that.
My parents did.
Yes.
But they also paid for piano lessons.
This episode is sponsored by your parents.
Every episode and everything I do in the future is sponsored by my parents, who paid for my education.
Mine is sponsored by my own sweat and blood.
Wow. That's admirable.
That's not true. My dad gave me college.
Wait. You
What?
got a certificate for music business.
Yes.
From Berklee College of Music.
Technology.
You learned like probably more than I did with my minor.
Probably. It was Berklee College of Music.
So you can't be smack talking me over here.
No, I won't.
So today's episode, Sherell is going to go into her coming out story.
Ooh,
and I thought it'd be, well, first of all, trigger warning. If
I feel like you're telling me trigger warning from my own story. I'm like, what do I gotta watch out for?
I mean, hopefully telling your story isn't too triggering for you.
I wouldn't be telling it if I wasn't okay to tell it.
Yeah, but a warning for listeners out there. Homophobia ?
Yeah, there's some themes about like mental health,
religious
trauma, that kind of stuff. So just if this episode is not for you, go ahead and skip it.
Yeah.
You're not hurting our feelings. We celebrate you taking care of yourself.
Yeah. But you thought this was important. I mean, I felt weird saying we thought this was important to tell because it's like your story, but I think your story is important.
Okay, because what you told me was, well, you thought this was important, so we're doing it.
It didn't sound good either way. It's not my story, but I think your story should be told if you're wanting to, because coming out stories, it's like there's people out there, if you're listening and you're like, why are coming outs, like, why does it have to be so dramatic? Or
why do we care?
Basically, yeah. Like, why? I think I had somebody comment on one of my like videos recently where I was like, oh, something about not realizing I was queer when I was like a younger adult or something, and they were like, yeah, I just don't like how, you know, when people put their whole identity around being queer or whatever, like, why does it have to be a big deal? Or, you know, and I'm just like, in an ideal world, it would be like super normal, right? Like,
yeah, and in some circles it's getting there, but we had to fight to make it that way, and not everybody has that freedom, which is why we still say coming out stories and why we still have to fight for justice and equality for the LGBTQ plus community.
yeah, and I think the reason people have to quote unquote come out or have these stories is because it's met with fear. It's a very brave thing to do a lot of the time, unless you have a really progressive circle and family, or, you know, but so many parts of the world, like, you can't even come out, you know, so it's like,
yeah. And even some parts in America, it's dangerous to come out. So
I feel like this story was meaningful to me because I'm like, people need to see, like, when you were younger, you looked to people like you are now that came out and were telling their stories, and we're saying, hey, like, it's going to be okay. And also for people that like haven't experienced that, just like curious about what it's like and how they can support people. Would you like to tell your coming out story?
Oh gosh, okay. Yeah. Do me a favor and ask questions, because my brain will just go on tangents. So if you
fine.
come up with a question that you like want to ask about it, go for it.
So I guess, like, when did you know?
When did I know
Yeah.
I was queer? I knew something was different when I was probably like around like 8 or 9, like in between the 7 and 9 range.
Which is amazing to me. Like,
Why?
I didn't know anything about like anything when I was like 8 or 9.
I was very self-aware. No, but I knew I was different. I just wasn't like my sisters. I wasn't like our neighbor friends. I wasn't interested in the same things they were interested in. Not to say all queer kids are the same, but
You like what is it?
huh?
You wear short skirts, I wear t-shirts.
There we have it, folks. Taylor Swift is gay.
The best ally of the queer community.
Self-appointed ally, but I think we've accepted
We love it,
her.
though.
Yeah. Yes, that threw me off.
Sorry, I forget tangents. Like me interjecting kind of throws you off sometimes. But you were
That's
saying
good.
you felt different from people around you.
Yeah, I felt different as a kid, and I was different, you know, black kid, white neighborhoods, adopted kid, you know, it was different. But I knew something was different, and then I think in 4th grade, I realized, like, while everybody was crushing on these stupid boys, I was crushing on my friends. Saucy. So I was the one that they'd be like, go tell Brandon that I don't want to kiss him. And so then I'd go and be like, Brandon, back off. And then I'd be like the hero, you know. So I don't know. I realized as a young kid that
The girls wanted you to like protect them and like.
yeah, that has not changed.
I see the appeal.
No, yeah, so I realized I was different as a little kid.
Okay, so you kind of had some time, because I know a bit of your story since we are married. So I know that you had like some times where you like tried to tell your parents and then you were like, never mind, because it was like frowned upon, and then, or I don't know how you want to tell that, but
Yeah.
like how did it keep like coming up to you, or like just.
Well, I think when I was in elementary school, I had overheard my mom talking to somebody about somebody they knew who was gay, And the way that they, like, I didn't know what gay was. We didn't really have that word, but that's the first time I heard that word. And then my little friends had like gay siblings or like gay aunts or uncles that they would talk about. And I was like, what is this? What does it mean? So when I heard my mom talking about it with whoever she was talking to, the way that they were speaking about it was so like shameful and negative. So I realized, I put two and two together and I was like, oh, I think I'm like that. And I also think I'm not allowed to talk about it because it's a negative thing. So I just like kept it to myself for a very long time. And I grew up in like a very conservative Christian world where basically if you do anything outside of the rules, that you are sinful, basically. And then we were always talking about like the rapture. Jesus is going to come back someday and take all the real Christians, and everyone who is still full of sin is going to be left behind, and their life's going to be terrible, and then they're going to burn in hell for forever.
Okay, can I do a slight tangent?
Yes.
You said this reminded me of a little bit of a funny story about the rapture, which we all learned about in churches and stuff. A story where you or one of your siblings left your clothes on the ground or something. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
No. I grew up like constantly in fear that I would be like left behind because I was super into those left behind like Christian-y books about God taking all the Christians and leaving everybody else, and everybody else is in a shit show, which it's not gonna happen like that. So that's just a whole side note.
Stressful. I don't know why I remember like a
but I think I know what you're talking about. Like I used to be like so stressed out about it that I would like, my sister and I had like a bunk bed, and so every night I'd just be like, did they get taken? And I'd like poke my head down over because I was on the top bunk. I'd like poke my head over and see if my sister was still there, and if she was still there, then we were good. Well, she didn't get taken. Okay, we're good. The rapture didn't happen.
You have a heart of gold. Oh, like you believed like other people would get.
Yeah, like I'm trying so hard to be good, but I kissed a girl and I feel so much shame about it. So everyone else is gonna get taken. I'm gonna be left, and then I would like try to make plans. Like, okay, how can I be self-sufficient? Like when everybody else gets taken, I'm a child. How do I take care of myself?
Oh my gosh.
Like an 11-year-old trying to figure out what are bills.
Oh my. Wow. Yeah, like Christianity just has so many layers.
Let's just say that.
Yeah, there's so many layers of things that are just so sad, and by taken, it's like Jesus takes the good people and they get to be with Jesus, and you're left all alone if you don't get.
But it's not just that you're left all alone, it's like all of this shit happens to you too. Oh my gosh. Like all hell breaks out on earth and all the bad sinners are still here having to deal with it. It made for really great Christian novels, but really, really bad theology.
Yeah, like those novels where somebody comes to Jesus and
yeah.
So you were afraid of being bad. You're afraid of going to hell because of your family and your churches and beliefs and stuff.
Yeah. I did try to talk to my mother about this a couple times, and that did not go well. So I realized, okay, this is not something that I can ever talk about.
And so like you don't have to go into like too many details, but it didn't go well. Do you mean it was like, oh, that's not true, you need to change? Like,
no, she said that it was disgusting and that it was a lie straight from Satan, and that she never wanted to hear me talk about it again. So I never talked about it again. And that was like a really, really hard moment for my mother and I. And I was a kid. I was probably still in elementary school. So yeah, that was a hard moment. So flash forward, like I faith is interesting to me because I grew up in like a faith world, So everybody around us were Christians. We went to this Baptist church, and that was like my world. But internally, personally, I did resonate with my faith, and my faith was very real to me as a kid. There was that pressure of like, this is the way to be good and to be accepted in our family. But before I was even adopted into the family, I had already had been developing that faith. All through high school, I had crushes on people, but I just never talked about it. And I was known as like the super Christian, you know, in my circles. I led the See You at the Polls, and I started like Christian clubs at my school, and I was like the Christian, and I like helped lead worship at church and Bible studies and all this stuff. Like I was like that uber nerd Christian girl.
And was all of that stuff like you felt deeply like you cared about it and you cared about faith and the people in the church, like your Bible studies and stuff? Or was it kind of like you were doing all of that stuff because you felt like you were supposed to, or like...
No, so before anybody ever put pressure on me about faith, I had started having a relationship with what I call God and this person I call Jesus. Like, my faith was already very real to me on my own, but there was always this constant pressure of, I feel so loved by this God, and yet everybody is telling me that there's something deeply wrong with me that God will not forgive. So it just kind of lived side by side all the time. And so when I was leading these Christian groups and all this stuff, it's like I actually did care about, you know, the world and people living their best lives and faith. Like I did care about those things deeply, but there was always alongside of that this pressure of, no matter what you do, you are never going to be fully accepted by God because there's something deeply wrong with you.
And do you think you truly believed what people were telling you about God not accepting, like, quote unquote, that part of you? Or do you think you always kind of knew the truth, but you were just struggling with what everybody else was saying? Or...
I think it was always this paradox. It just never made sense to me because the Jesus that I knew never sounded like the one everybody was talking about. And yet my entire world as a kid and a teenager, it's like everybody that was closest to me in that world only had one viewpoint. So it was just this constant tension of, this doesn't sound like my Jesus, but this is the Jesus that everybody else knows besides me. So it just kind of lived in that tension point.
Yeah. Can you talk about like your first like experience with spirituality, God, Jesus, your first like memories of that?
Very first memory. Okay, so not to get too woo-woo on you guys, but that's this type of episode. And like, I do want to say a disclaimer, like, I today celebrate all faiths. I don't think that one person knows God or this thing we call God more than anybody else, you know. So I don't think like one faith tradition has like all of the truth. I think it kind of takes all of us working together. So I'm throwing that out there. But my personal experience, the one that I celebrate and hold dear to my heart, is when I was in foster homes. So I spent the first like 4 years of my life in foster homes, and I had a supernatural experience in one particularly bad foster home. When I was like stuck in this room for hours and hours and hours on end, it was just me on a bed with some stuffed animals, and it was like, if I leave this room, I couldn't even leave the room. The room was locked. But if I left the room, there was nothing but screaming and fighting on the other side of the room. So I didn't even really want to go out there anyway. So it's like every time I get out there, someone's screaming in my face. Yeah, foster homes in the 90s. Super fun. Are you okay?
It's always so hard to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's situations out there today, just like, it's just
yeah,
heavy. But yeah.
Yeah. One day we'll adopt a kid and give them love. Yeah, but I mean, little Sherell is okay. I've worked through this with therapy. This is a long, long, long time ago. But yeah, my experience was those moments and those days where it was the darkest. There was this like angel, this man, like this person who came into the room. It was just like in the room. And I just remember him being filled with like light. And I remember looking in his eyes, and his eyes just, it was like all the love in the world was in his eyes. And when he smiled at me, it was just like, whoa, like I just felt belonging. And he would tell me these stories about his beloved. And I just got the sense of like he knew who I would be one day, and he knew who I was on a level that I never knew myself. And he knew who I would be one day, and he absolutely loved her. And he would talk about how much he loved everybody. He would just tell me stories about like the world being a good place and the world being a loved place. And I would tell him stories about like my little stuffed animal did this and blah, blah, blah. I would write songs. I would sing songs that I made up, and I would tell stories. And that's how I spent my days in that particular foster home. So when I got adopted and they told me about Jesus, I was like, pretty sure I already know that guy. So it's like I never had to like do the whole accept Jesus blah blah blah, because I was like, I already knew from the beginning who he was and that I was loved by him before any adult put their opinions and their theology. I already know him because he already showed himself to me. So
oh my gosh, you make me cry every time with that story. Like,
that's a very like vulnerable story, but I want to share it with you guys because like that's how I see the world. That and I do celebrate everybody's their faith, because everybody has something like that that's valuable to them, that has been meaningful to them, and I celebrate those things. I think we're all just trying to find God or being our source, and we're all just trying to find ourselves again, but that's my story.
Yeah. I just like, I don't know. I had such a safe like childhood and stuff. Like I'd never had any intense experiences like that before a certain age. And like with God and spirituality, like I just experienced everything, what you're taught in church, and just very in a put together box of the Bible stories, and very like kind of easy to understand as a kid, however they try to tell those Bible stories and about Jesus. And
with the flannel graph things, did you guys
the little like felt people on the board.
Honestly, the bad theology that has come out of those flannel graph like Bible stories, well-meaning but terrible theology and zero history. But anyway, keep going.
But yeah, it's just I never heard like Jesus portrayed in that strong of a way, like in real life, like somebody in our real life. There's of course like the story of like in the Bible of like people seeing Jesus, and like
nobody in your actual life that you actually knew.
Yeah, it just makes me like cry, because it's like when you don't have like an experience like that, there's always a part of you, if you're like wanting to believe in Jesus, or you believe, like there's always a part of you that could doubt, like, well, I'm not really sure like you're here with me all the time, or I'm not sure what you're like. So just to hear somebody so sure about it, I don't know, it's just, it makes me want to cry, like I am truly beloved, and there's truly somebody there with me. So yeah, I thought that was a good piece of context for your story, and I wanted to hear it again.
Well, thank you for asking, baby.
So fast forward, you are a young adult, you're trying to figure out life, what to do next, you're living with your family or something like that.
So this is where it gets into my coming out. So I graduated high school, had stayed in a closet the whole time. I knew at this point, like, okay, I actually do crush on girls, but I never knew a world in which I could keep my faith and also be queer at the same time. Never knew that was possible. Didn't know anybody who was doing that. Through high school, I was crushing on other like high schoolers and being like, oh, something's different. But I'm looking around and I'm like, I do not know anybody else like this. And I knew I had like gay friends because I played high school basketball. I played all kinds of sports in high school, so I had lots of gay friends, but none of them were Christians.
All the gay ladies are in the sports.
Yeah, they were hot too. But I had like lots of gay friends, but I didn't know anybody who was Christian and gay at the same time. At least as far as I knew.
And you felt like you had to be one or the other. Yes,
because that was how, because in high school, you know, people are talking about homosexuality and all those things. Like people are talking about being queer in church and stuff. But at this point in high school, they're changing the conversation to like, it's just evil. You can't be both, blah, blah, blah.
Attracted to the same, struggling with the same.
Struggling. SSA.
I never heard that acronym.
Yeah, I had friends who were gay, and they'd be like, I struggle with SSA. Oh, and I was like, SSA? What?
SOS.
Oh my God. SOS. SSA.
And that's not unique to you at all. Like I know people in my life that say that they've struggled with same-sex attraction, or
I'm like, listen, it's not a struggle. I fully love that part of myself, but I can't tell anybody.
Yeah. So you are in high school, you know all these people, and then so after high school, after all your secret crushes, etc., and your Bible studies,
so many secret crushes,
you had to figure out what to do with your life.
Yeah. So I was going to go to I was gonna be a youth pastor.
Oh my gosh!
Glad I didn't become one.
You would be so good at that, though. Aside from I want everything to burn to the ground. You care so well for like teenagers and kids, and you're like, you're so fun, and just you're good at telling stories. Yeah, if that's all it was, I'd be great. Yeah, but I don't care for the church's agenda. No, all the theology and stuff obviously is, you know. Yeah. Anyway, no, I wanted to be a youth pastor because I didn't really want any teen to feel lonely like I did growing up. So I thought, well, I'll be a youth pastor because I'm a theology nerd and I care about the state of young people. And I got into a bunch of Christian private schools, and just something in me was like, no. One, because they're as expensive as Harvard. Private Christian colleges. Yes, they were like Harvard prices. I literally looked it up. Some of these schools I got into were like more expensive. You're like, these are not the prices of Jesus. And I was like, how much am I supposed to make as a youth pastor? Like, how am I supposed to pay this back? Well, that's familiar to many, I'm sure, for different majors and schools. So I didn't do that. I was like, I don't know. And there was like that thing inside me that was like, I will die if I try to go to a Christian college and I have this inside of me. So I'm just not going to do it. So glad I didn't do that. But what I chose to do wasn't exactly easier. So I did. I stayed home. My family had moved to California. So we were back in the States. And I went to like And where were you before that? I went to high school in Germany. Right. So we were in Europe for a while. But yeah, we came back to the States, and I went to a community college. And in that community college, like I started getting involved in like a local church where I was like doing youth ministry and hanging out with like the teens and just being a safe space for them and doing like music and stuff at church. So in there, in California, for the first time, I was actually surrounded by out queer Christians. Like our church was filled with them, and then college had many. It like shook me. Like culture shock.
I was like a whole culture shock. I was like, how did I go from not knowing a single queer Christian to being surrounded by them?
And by queer Christian, you mean like people that still believed in like Jesus and God, and then they also were like positive about being in same-sex relationships and like,
yeah, whatever I define Christianity as, like this faith practice still has meaning to you, and you also are not willing to hide the fact that you're queer.
mm-hmm.
Like for the first time in my life, I saw people who lived in that like openness and that freedom. I was like, what the heck do I do with this? This is a whole like paradigm shift that I didn't know what to do with. So I got super depressed.
Yeah.
So I hated my life, and I realized I think I'm gonna have to come out. And at this point I realized I'm bisexual, right?
The tension is growing.
Yeah, and like I was learning from my friends, like, oh, there's a word for this. It's called bisexual, and there is a version of life where I will be celebrated for embracing this part of me.
Mm.
And I won't be abandoned, and I won't be alone. There's a version of life after this. So I slowly came out to like small groups, friends of mine, but in the churches and all that, like to all the adults and mentors in my life, I was definitely into my family. I was like, not gay. So yeah, I was figuring myself out, and I got depressed, and I got depressed because I was like going to college, realizing I was bi, realizing I wasn't willing to give up my faith to come out, realizing that I was actually going to have to, like, if I wanted a life beyond this, I would need to come out. And that was really, really hard. So it got me really, really depressed. And also in the depression, there was like this constant thought of like everybody around me in my church and in my family is telling me loudly that I cannot be simultaneously loved by God and also bisexual. And yet I have lived a life and walked in a relationship with God where I believed that he loved me. So what the heck? And I got so frustrated. I was like, well, if you won't change, because I had prayed regularly for years, like, take this away from me. I don't want to be this way.
Yeah, like, just make me like straight.
Make me like everybody else. Take this away. And he never did. So then I said, well, if you're the type of God that will condemn me for something that you refuse to change, then I don't want to have anything to do with you. And so like I walked away for 9 months, and those 9 months were like the darkest months of my life, where it just got like super depressed, super suicidal. I did not want to live anymore. I thought about ending it every single day, like driving to college. And I'm so thankful that God put friends in my life who cared about me and who knew the truth about me, and they didn't know that I was in that dark place, but they just turned up for me every single day at college campus. And then when I was home, like I just had the sweetest little community. They didn't know it, but they were saving my life every day. So I had the courage to come out to them. But then I told my family, because I like failed out of community college. I don't know why it's funny. I'm like not in a place where I'm like, this is really hard to talk about anymore, because this is like a long time ago. But I would like have such a hard time just drive. It was 30 minutes to the school, so I'd have to drive 30 minutes, and every time it was a struggle. Like, just get there, don't crash the car, just get there, because when you get there you have friends. When you get there you can make music. When you get there you'll be okay. But I didn't have the energy after I got there to actually go into class. So I failed out of my classes. And that was a wake-up call to me. Like, I went from English 1 to English 4 in a year. And then my English 4 professor was like, you are not going to pass this class. And
that's depression for you.
Yeah, because I was like, what do you mean I'm not gonna pass this class? I'm great at English.
You're like, I'm great. I'm just not going to class.
I'm just not here. I haven't done anything all year. What do you want from me? So it was at that point that it was a wake-up call for me, and I went home and I told my brother and my family, hey, this is what's going on. And I have a very big family, so they were all on the phone with each other trying to figure out how to help me. Next thing I know, I was shipped off to my brother, who's a pastor.
Shipped off?
They literally stuck me on a train. I don't remember much of this week. I just know I was on a train to go see my brother, who is a pastor. And within the next 2 weeks, my whole family was there, or like zoomed in, figuring out what to do with me.
So once you told somebody, or somebody in your family found out that you were struggling with depression,
yes,
they threw all the flags in the air, and they said, we gotta do
good
something.
for them, because it was at that point like, hello, take care of me.
I need help.
Yeah, so they just pushed stop on everything. And then I literally can't tell you the conversations that we had. I just remember one. The whole week was just, I don't remember it. I only remember saying, I'm bisexual. I also love Jesus. I don't know what to do with that. That's all I remember. And then a lot of conversations ensued, like the next 6 months, of like family members confessing weird things to me to try to be relatable. And I'm like, I still remember those, you weirdos.
Oh, like I also struggle.
Yeah,
with
I also did. I'm like, you could have not told me that. That's fine.
So then what happened?
So then I spent the next, I don't even know how long. I just rebuilt. Like, I went to therapy, hated the therapist. My first therapist was freaking terrible because he was a pastor too. So he had a whole agenda. So I stopped going to him, went to real therapy, and realized, okay, I need to just focus on me. I don't need to focus on getting a college education. I need to focus on healing. So what do I need? And my parents were kind of like, okay, Sherell, you're like an adult. So you need to either go to college and move out, or you need to be an adult now. So they were like, okay, you either go to this like Christian non-profit organization, or you go back to college and start paying rent and do all this stuff, but you can't just sit here in this state that you are in. So I was like, fair enough. So I went to the Christian nonprofit organization. I knew I was bisexual, but I wasn't sure that I was going to tell anybody about it. And at this point, I was like, okay with that part of me. But I was like, I know how this goes. I might not tell anybody here. Long story short, I worked for that organization for a couple years to basically figure out who God was and who I was, and also like my purpose in the world. So I went there, and I was there for a few years, and during that time I fell in love with one of my staff leaders. Yes, my ex.
Love.
Yes. How do you feel about that?
It's fine. I've had some time to get over your exes. You having exes.
Yes, I have had exes. I have had a whole life before you. Yeah, so I fell in love while there, and she didn't fully realize she was queer, and we were basically discovering this together through the confines of like a very conservative organization. So when we did decide to like share our relationship, they basically said, like, she was overseas at the time of this happening, so we were like long distance at this point, and they basically said, you either end this relationship or you have no business being here. And at the time, like, I was living off of support from, like, you had to raise support to be in the organization. So I was like, okay, so all of my income goes away. My housing was through this organization. My job was through this organization. My friends and ecosystem, like my entire ecosystem was through this organization. So if I wasn't in it, if I was like forced out of it, then I would effectively, like, I didn't have a plan. I would have just been stranded out here. So,
That's terrifying.
yeah, so I was like, lose everything, and then also have to then explain to my church and my family why I got kicked out of this organization.
And they already kind of knew you were bi, but then
there was
also
no world in which they had like accepted that as truth or as okay.
They thought you were like maybe gonna change or something, or
They at this point thought I had changed because I'd been at that organization for a while and I knew the game. Like, okay, well, I'm not bi anymore. So, and like there was a point, and I think it's important to note, like while I was at the first year of this organization, there was like a moment, like there was so much pressure, like I could not be bisexual and be at this organization at the same time. Like I couldn't be out and be at this organization, and there was all this like spiritual pressure, and you're here with these leaders who are like, I know what God has for you, I know what's the truth for you, all this stuff, like I'm gonna teach you how to hear God, all this stuff. Like they had all the spiritual authority, and they also had the say over like my well-being.
yeah.
So
These are what we would call toxic tendencies.
yeah, wouldn't say that's healthy and wouldn't say gravitate towards that, but that's the type of place that I was in, falling in love with a woman for the first time, and like just I was in that like pressure cooker. And so there was a moment where I was like, I don't think like who I am is bisexual. And I told people that at the organization, and they all celebrated, and they put me on this pedestal, and they made me speak to other new people, and I was like the face of it for a little while, like, oh, she's saved from bisexuality. And I was like, oh, I never said I wasn't like attracted to women. I feel like that's not who I am.
The labels, yeah.
Now flash forward, like, so when they gave me that pressure and they said, okay, you either need to break up with she was my fiance, you either need to break up with her, or, which, can I just say, there's a moment in time how stupid it was to ever be engaged or anything resembling engaged when neither of you are out of the closet, you're long distance, and you're in this like pressure cooker of a conservative world.
I don't think your story is unique. And that's
Are you serious?
at least that part of it. I think I've seen like at least one other person, like just somebody telling their story of like being in a relationship and both of you are completely in the closet and you have no safety to reveal yourselves or come out, but you're also like feeling very enwrapped in the relationship and like you want to be together forever. Like for some reason that is like not like that has happened to other people.
It's crazy. And like now being with like us and just knowing like what it feels like to have a whole relationship out of the closet, it just feels like peace. Like I can't say that I ever felt a moment of peace when I was in the closet at that organization. And that's sad because so many people have that as their reality. But anyway, so I chose to break up with my ex, and they sat in the room and made sure that I did it while I like Zoomed her on her birthday. She thought I was like calling her.
Sucks.
Yeah, she thought I was calling her to say happy birthday, and I was calling to break up, and my leaders were in the room to make sure I did it. So I stayed with that organization for like a year more, and then I went on a sabbatical because I reached a point where I was like, this is not sustainable. So I took a year off, and I got into counseling, like actual real therapy, and I spent a year away from the organization, away from doing anything for anybody. I got 2 real jobs that I really, really loved, and I just, at this point, I had like literally probably like 30 something people reaching out to me, just being like, hey, my brother came out to me and I don't know how to respond. What does he need to hear? Or I think I'm gay and I don't really know what to do about it. Or like I had all of these like there's a kid in our youth group who is trans. How do we support them? What do we do? Like everybody just out of nowhere, because I wasn't like going public with my process.
Yeah, I mean, it just all happened. Like, yeah.
So it was like everybody just started reaching out to me, and I remember telling God, like, okay, this isn't going away, and I don't want to have to do this again. So
Jeez.
let's go here. What is your heart for queer people?
Yeah, like you're finding like everything people have thrown under the rug or that people want to hide, because it's like, oh, this struggle for people isn't supposed to exist. But then once they see somebody that can like help them, all of it comes out, and it's like all of this stuff is here. Queer kids are here, trans kids are here. Like there's no hiding it.
You can't sweep them under the rug. They're here.
Yeah, and people do, and it's all like a happy face, and we're teaching these things, but like it's there. Like it's just such a need for people to know what to do and to talk about, even just to talk about it when they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or they don't know how to support, or they don't know how to even think about their own faith without like harming people with their beliefs. Like it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. So I had all these people reaching out to me, asking for advice, asking for perspective, asking for what I thought, which was really funny because I at this point hadn't like said I'm bisexual and I'm cool with that, and but everybody was reaching out to me.
People were just like, they needed something, and once they felt like you could help them, or you were a safe space, or you had experienced something similar, it's like boom, like the people come out of the shadows, like help
everybody.
Oh my gosh,
like many people. And I resisted it at first, but I felt like Jesus was shoving this into my life to deal with. So I said, fine, let's go here. What is your heart for queer people? And at this point I was like single. Like I had already like broken up with my ex, and I had zero plans to be with anybody else. So I was like, honestly, I didn't see what life could look like. Like I had this vision of like, I really, really hope in my wildest dreams this is what it would look like, but I didn't believe that was ever possible. I didn't believe I could be like happy. So I had kind of already given it up for myself, and I told God, like, what is your heart? What is your best for queer people? If you made all of us and you love all of us and you're in all of us and you're for all of us, what is your heart for people who are queer? And I spent a year just kind of in that surrender period of like, just teach me, show me what I don't know. And that's when I met a lot more like queer Christians who had done like the theological work around this, and I started digging into the Bible and history and like Greek and Hebrew and learning what culture and context was about all of these like passages of scripture that seemed to be so negative about queer people. And I also sat with like, because actions are huge, right? What we say is one thing, but how we act is another. So I watched like traditionally how the evangelical church has like acted, because if we're supposed to be living in truth and living in love, but then every action that we're taking is unkind, unloving, and is not good for people, then maybe the truth is not there. So I watched and saw how the evangelical church would treat young people who had come out, or people who were prominent in the evangelical world. They would come out and then they would just get like, their lives would be destroyed. After all of that, after sitting with all this for a year, I was like, what I had told the organization about who I am is not bisexual, that was true. Because the deepest and truest thing about me is that I was beloved. Full stop. Like that is who I am, that is my identity. That was the truest thing about me. That doesn't mean that I wasn't bisexual. That just means that my whole identity wasn't in my sexuality. It was in being loved. Full stop. So yeah, I like found my identity in being utterly, radically loved, and then was able to accept these other parts of me as true as well. And I came out. I like left the organization. I said, hey, thank you guys, I am not coming back. And I changed my circles, and I just started to pull away and to create new circles very intentionally. And I came out of the closet like a long time ago, and I did not look back. And ever since then, I've been like, the people that were like ride or die with me when I was figuring this out a long time ago, a couple of them are still here. There's a lot of people that have been like, I don't have any tolerance for you. So, you know, this has been like a 15-year thing. So I've been out for
exhausting.
I know I've been out for over a decade. So I've just been like, I look around at this life that I've made. Like, you came around, I met you like just 4 years ago. I look around at this life I made, and I can't believe how good it is to be out. And I embrace my faith and also make room and celebrate and learn from everybody else's faith. And I also get to be bisexual, and I also get to have a wife and family. Like, it's just, and I also, that lie that I constantly told myself of like, I'm gonna lose everything and everybody, wasn't true.
Well, the lie that you told yourself because you were getting like that from everybody around you, that other people would have a say over your livelihood and your stability, like whether or not you were bisexual.
Yeah.
I feel like you just have been trying to survive and take care of yourself for a long time, and the different ways that you've done that are totally natural considering all the circumstances you've been in.
It sucks that stories like this are being told, you know? Like, I wish that nobody had this story. But I also know that there are people listening who know somebody with a story or a similar story, or are walking through this themselves. And so me saying this like matters, because like, you knew how it was to come out to your conservative Christian family, and that was only 4 years ago. Like, people are still walking through this. Yeah. It still matters. It's still hard.
And there's still, like, we know there's still kids in Christian schools or churches. Like, it's still a like all of the mentalities that you've had to battle, and all of the theology, the ways people interpret the Bible at face value, how we've, you know, made it that way. Like,
yeah,
people still don't know how to go deeper, and it's still harmful. And
I don't know, I think people forget that the point of everything is love. Like, the point of it all. If your faith doesn't bring you to a point where you are a more kind, gentle, and loving human, then it's not benefiting you or others, you know?
And sometimes, and I feel like that takes a lot of work. Like, you're working against a lot of beliefs. You're working against a lot of parts of society when you say, this is what I believe, and it's uncomfortable to open my mind to anything else, or it's wrong to do that. It's like, if people are saying they're not safe or they're not being loved or accepted, it's worth being uncomfortable. It's worth challenging. Like, you can change your beliefs, like you and I both have, in a lot of ways, because we've had to, and it just leads more to like love. And
yeah, and it's like, it's kind of funny, but you know how like in the workplace they have like the when you know better, do better type of signs. Like, have you ever seen those posters? Well, in like management, they have like this kind of rule, like when you know better, do better. So I feel like that applies to us just in life in general. Like, when you know better, do better. I feel like we're constantly learning how to be more accepting, be more understanding, because, you know, I'm a Black queer woman with a disability. I see the world the way I see the world, and I'm constantly learning how to show up and support people better who are not like me, you know?
Yeah.
Who don't deal with what I deal with, or I don't deal with what they deal with. There's a need for humility and there's a need to have a willingness to like pivot.
Well, and I was
better.
Yeah, especially like we've chosen to believe like in something way larger than us that's also feels very personal, and everybody's beliefs are personal because we're people. And so it's like, if you believe in something like larger than yourself, then you have to believe that there's more that you don't know, like truly believe that.
Yeah. And I always thought about how arrogant it is, like in the world that I grew up in, and I still see it around, like people think that they have, like they hold the corner on God, right? They think, oh, I know what the truth is, and it's this and this.
I mean, we think that sometimes, but in a different way.
In different ways. But I feel like it's always like the story of like the 3 blind men with the elephant, and they're all holding on to a different part of the elephant. One's holding on to its tail, one's holding on to its trunk, one's holding on to its ear. And they're like, well, this is what an elephant looks like. This is what an elephant looks like. And they're all right, but they're also all wrong. And it's like, yes, that is true about the elephant. However, that's not the whole truth. And that's how I feel about God, like Yahweh, this universe, this being. Like, that's how I feel about our connection with each other. It's like we're all kind of right, and we're all also wrong, because how can we see the whole thing, just us? Like, it takes all of us, all of our siblings, everyone, to get even a tiny glimpse of what this thing is called God.
Well, your story has given me a huge glimpse into like spirituality, and you just have such a unique story, and at the same time can relate to a lot of other people out there. And I, as your wife, want to thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thanks for being curious about it. It's not really something that we talk about a lot. So
yeah, but when we first like met, I think after even like a few weeks of hanging out, you said, I want to tell you my life story. And I was like, okay. You were just like laying on the couch, and I was sitting there, and your head was on my lap, and you just told me
very romantic. Very romantic.
And you just told me your story, and I was just like, whoa, you know. So I just thank you for sharing it with other people, and it's really important. And I look forward to sharing my coming out story
I got some
next
questions.
time. I don't know what questions.
Some questions.
You know my story, so I don't know what kind of questions you have for me. But
oh, just you wait.
Do we have anything else that you want to say?
For the future, not all of our episodes are going to be like heavy on spirituality or heavy like this. But we are willing to talk about whatever you guys want to. And we had a friend reach out to us kind of asking us to explain a little further about all that. So that's why we went in this direction. Thank you for listening to it. On the practical side, do we have anything exciting or new in life happening, baby?
I think we're opening for our friend at the Siren in Morro Bay on September 3rd.
Have we been to the Siren?
I think it's somewhere around 2 or 2:30. Yeah, we've been there before.
Yeah.
So I think that is all on the schedule at the moment, and it's going to be super fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So if you're on a vacation to the Central Coast, look up the Siren. And
come grab a beer with us.
Come grab a beer. Come buy us a beer.
I don't like beer, but I'll take a...
I'm trying to find... every time we go out, I'm like, try this one. Maybe you'll like it. So
yeah, I'm more of like a mixed, maybe like a margarita or something.
Who isn't a margarita person? Let's be real.
Okay.
All right. Well, I love you, babe.
I love you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of At Our
I
Place
just got super
with
like.
Megan and Sherell. I'm Sherell.
What is that accent?
What do you mean?
What Megan and Sherell?
It's my professional accent. Thanks for listening to another episode. You're so rude. You have rolled your eyes at me like 5 times in the last 10 seconds.
I hate to say it, but
You hate to say it?
you're a dork.
Takes one to know one. I love you.
I love you too.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. See you next time. Bye.
Peace out.
Peace out, Girl Scout.